All right, we're up and recording.
Thank you, Monica. So, I guess this is not our first meeting in April. Actually, we met on Friday. So we will begin with a period of meditation, and I will give some instruction to help people to settle. So just establishing a balanced and erect posture. You can also practice lying down if that's more practical for you. It kind of increases the risk of sleepiness, which is one of the 5 hindrances to meditation. So if you do choose to lie down, you might want to keep your eyes open, or at least occasionally open your eyes to make sure you're awake. Although it's quite possible to fall asleep sitting up, as I've often proved in my own practice. So I've even fallen asleep standing up in a meditation hall. So so you can close your eyes or just lower your gaze. Just coming into stillness first and just feeling the body at rest. Our bodies kind of make their own natural adjustments once we close our eyes and turn the attention inward. And letting the body soften, relaxing the jaw, releasing the shoulders, and breathing into the belly. And feeling the body breathing in its natural way. The breath can be deep or shallow, long or short, smooth or rough. We apply mindfulness just to know these experiences, not to control or judge the breath. Just feel it as it is, as it evolves. There are different ways to focus on the breath. We can pay attention to a particular point of sensation, like the tip of the nose, the upper lip, the movement of the belly, chest. rising and falling. We can also follow the breath. So feeling the entire experience as the breath enters the body and following it down into the lungs and the expansion of the body, and following it back out. We can feel the breath in the context of the whole body. So we bring attention first to the whole body, and then we observe the movements within and the sensations within that larger context. So this is just to say that there isn't a right or wrong way to pay attention to the breath, but that each of us can find what's most comfortable for us, what's most natural and easeful in paying attention to the breath. And that might change over the course of a meditation period, or it might be something you work with for a longer period of time and see how that evolves, or what becomes more useful over time. However we follow the breath, we can see its connection to the larger experience of the body, mindfulness of the body. As our attention clarifies, we also can see its connection to our feelings, to our emotions, to our felt experience. The breath moves with feelings as well as with the body. Feelings move with the breath. If we watch the mind as we meditate, we also see how feelings are connected to thoughts, thoughts connected to feelings, thoughts connected to the body connected to thoughts. And so mindfulness of the breath opens us to this full range of experiences. It also becomes apparent that all of these things, body, breath, feelings, thoughts, are in constant motion, movement, flux. And so the insight into impermanence reveals itself simply through observing the flow of experience in these different realms. Okay, then. So the we've been doing lately is working with my book, Burning Desire. And the kind of one of the principles or themes in the book is, and I guess the central theme is that we can think of the Dharma as a power. And of course, we have the term higher power in the 12-step world. And with Dharma, we don't think of it so much as higher or lower. It's just power. And then really it depends on how we utilize that power, that or how we work with those powers, what the positive or negative outcomes are. So the first sort of, I kind of go through these different elements of the Buddhist teachings, so the word Dharma has a general meaning of truth, but more specifically, we can refer to the Buddhist teachings, or sometimes called the Buddha Dharma. And so I'm kind of taking apart those teachings and sort of looking at different things and how they function as powers, what their powers are, and how that relates to addiction and recovery. I guess that's a fair enough summation. So the first power that I talk about in here is the power of karma, which is, as I talked about last time, it's a word that's kind of misunderstood and sort of seen simplistically as being about fate, but really it just means action. And the law of karma is the law of cause and effect, the law that says actions have results. And that in the Buddhist framework, we say that there's a moral fabric of the universe that is intertwined with karma. So karma isn't just a sort of passive, well, difficult to frame it. It's not lacking in ethical or moral meaning. So our behavior, when it is or is not morally, upright, the results reflect that. And so this really is kind of, a power greater than ourselves, something we can't really escape or avoid, and we try, we try to get away with stuff, whether it's lying or cheating or stealing or more subtle things. And certainly using intoxicants, while not viewed as immoral, and maybe I should talk about this a little bit, but in Buddhist terms, it's not viewed as immoral, but it's viewed as creating a delusion in the mind that then creates a greater likelihood of immorality and other harm that comes about. So the 5 precepts, let's say that the 5 lay precepts, kind of the things, the monastics have more rules, but for lay people, it's not to kill, not to steal, not to harm sexually, not to lie or harm verbally, and not to use intoxicants. And the first 4 are seen as moral guidelines that have moral implications in any context. Anytime you kill, steal, harm, sexually, or lie, there's negative impact. With intoxicants, it's the result of what it does that does to your mind and your body that leads to the greater likelihood of breaking other precepts, but also of just general heedlessness that takes us out of being mindful. So it's not like having a glass of wine, as in the classic, I can have one glass of wine, is considered immoral in the sense that lying about having the glass of wine is considered to be immoral, but that the results of that can lead to harm. So in any case, where I've got the section that I'm looking at today, which is starts on page 22. So the book is conveniently broken into these little chunks, convenient for me, that is, as I go through the book. It kind of focuses, it seems to focus mostly on ignorance. That's kind of what I want to talk about today. So this is another term. So much of the language of Buddhism requires us to sort of talk about the meaning of the terms. So ignorance, the meaning of ignorance in English essentially means that you don't know something, but we also sort of use it as a pejorative to say you're ignorant, to imply that you're stupid, and so that's not at all what it means in Buddhist terms. It does not mean you're stupid. It means that, but it does, it is related to the English meaning, but it has a more specific kind of focus, which is that you don't understand the principles essentially of Dharma. Some of the synonyms that are used for ignorance in Buddhism are delusion. So you're kind of living in a delusion. It can be sort of thought of being under a spell. So you really don't understand the key principles of Dharma. So first of all, it means you don't understand the law of karma, or that, and in recovery terms, we can kind of correlate this with denial. And we can see that, denial is something, again, a term that has sort of a specific meaning that I think, has some layers of meaning or variations of meaning that denial suggests that it is an intentional ignorance, we could say, a choice to not know. I'm just denying it. I'm not going to look. But it's also sort of understood, I think, in the world of addiction as not understanding, as sort of not realizing that we have a problem, or not realizing that there's a danger in the substances that we're using. So we can see how that ties in with this Buddhist idea of ignorance. And I think we can also see why mindfulness is kind of the key tool for addressing both of these things. Because mindfulness is a way of looking at reality in as kind of pure and direct way as we can. And that has the capacity to break through our delusion, our denial, our ignorance. So as we practice meditation, and I referred to this morning in the guided meditation, we become more subtly aware of our experience. And one of the classic insights that comes out of that is seeing how everything is impermanent. Now, in Buddhist terms, ignorance or delusion around impermanence is that we believe everything is permanent, or we think that things are going to last core to things. And we can see how that form of ignorance leads to all kinds of suffering as we cling to things that must inevitably change, whether it's our own bodies, our relationships, the world around us that we see. I mean, ideas like make America great again, not to, make this political, are explicitly trying to hold on to something, right? It's this looking to the past as something, we want to get that back because we want it to stay. We don't want things to change. In classic terms, I mean, this is what, being conservative in some sense is. And obviously that's a simplistic, and there's much more, and there are valuable things about the idea of conservatism, not to mention certainly the idea of conserving things would be one good thing about it. But we can see how there's this great tendency to hold on to things. We don't want, things to change. There is fear and disruption that happens with change. There is adaptation, which can be uncomfortable, particularly as we age. So we can see how this then, though, ties back into addiction, because addiction, the behavior of, let's say, persistently intoxicating ourselves is a way of trying to maintain some steady state, some pleasant mind state. So in other words, it's an attempt to deny impermanence, which must inevitably fail, which is, of course, the disaster of addiction. It can't, if we could stay with that, one mind state, that lovely mind state after our third beer at the lake when we were 17, and just as the sun was setting and the light was glistening off the water, and all the bodies around us were youthful and beautiful, great, we're all set. However, it ain't happening. And instead, of course, there's this sort of seed planted in our mind of, there was something perfect there. And I want to preserve that. I have my own story of that, which is recorded in one of my texts, if I may say, of the first time that I combined marijuana with Jimi Hendrix. And it was after, I was in high school, and I had a band in high school, and we got a gig to play at a fraternity in University of Pennsylvania. And we stayed overnight at my older brother's friend's place, and he had his place painted like psychedelically. Who knows? Memory is, untrustworthy. Nonetheless, what is very clear and I will, can confirm, was sitting on the couch listening to "Are You Experienced?" Hendrix's first album, one of the greatest rock albums in history, if I dare say, my opinion, as a rock scholar. And I literally had the thought, I just want to be like this all the time, and that was the beginning, of almost 20 years of smoking pot that, it crippled my life. And there were other factors like persistent depression, but marijuana, had this really destructive quality on my particularly on my emotional growth development or lack thereof. And but again, this was just like delusion. It was like a perfect embodiment of delusion. I want to be like this forever. It's like, no, it can't happen. One of the things that I like about, just to really switch gears, about the marriage ceremony is the phrase "till death do us part." And I think it's really beautiful that people that incorporated into this ceremony that's supposed to be sort of joyful and celebratory, and very much in the moment, very much alive, and one that's traditionally meant to bring about more life, for people to reproduce. That there's this acknowledgement that this must end, and that one of us will die, and then the other one will die, and not the traditional we're going to be together forever. How people say that, like, what do you mean? Like, do you have any understanding about like human lifespans? So ignorance. Let me put it in another context, another Buddhist context. It's the first and sort of triggering element of the dependent origination, which is dependent origination is kind of the detailed description, includes 12 stages of how humans wind up caught in the cycle of suffering. And it's very interesting that it begins with this, with ignorance. So why is that? The suggestion from the Buddha, and this kind of ties in with reincarnation or rebirth in a way. So not necessarily the most accessible Buddhist teaching. But essentially what the Buddha is saying is that we have a misunderstanding about how to attain happiness and peace. And it is grounded in our feeling that getting pleasure and getting things and relationships, in other words, acquiring things we want, and then getting rid of discomfort and things that we don't want, that through that process of acquisition and dispossession, shall I say, that we can eventually arrive at some happiness, that can solve the sort of human question of how to find happiness. And this very impulse is delusion, is ignorance, because it's wrong, right? It's telling us the exact opposite of what's going to bring happiness. But because we have that belief, we set off this chain of actions that must lead to a point of frustration, dissatisfaction eventually, because we can't get to a permanent state of happiness through acquisition and getting rid of the things, getting the things we want and getting rid of the things we don't want. And one of the reasons we can't, maybe it's the main reason, but certainly one of the reasons we can't accomplish this sort of permanent state of satisfaction, is that every state is impermanent. And so no matter, we are, constantly pedaling, this swimming, whatever we are doing to try to get there. And there's no there to get to. There's nothing that can be attained in that way. So it's interesting. So the Buddha, I'm not sure I can express, I'll try to express my understanding of this, of where we do want to get to with Buddhism, which is a kind of reversing, that whole process of trying to acquire. So it's letting go, right? I mean, we sort of know this, right? And it's like what we do when we're meditating. But I think where this path really points is to not just, I'm going to let go of my thoughts, or I'm going to let go of my, wanting things, or going to let go of my anger. Ultimately, we have to let go of ignorance. And that's tricky because, first of all, we are deeply, deeply conditioned to see things and experience things the way we experience them, and have the belief that we have. And what it is that we are trying to touch, in other words, nibbana or nirvana, is something that is so subtle that the mind has a really hard time touching it. I was going to say grasping it, but not the best word to use. And our minds are drawn to movement. Our minds are drawn to energy. So our minds are drawn to thoughts, feelings, sensations, perceptions, sounds, tastes. And all of these things are in constant flow. And our minds, are drawn to that movement. Behind that movement, we could say, this is all, of course, just language. We could say behind that movement, there is stillness. But it's very difficult to perceive stillness with the mind that grasps movement. And I find it, as I talk about this, I think it's very interesting that even though our mind is drawn to movement, it has this delusion of permanence. So we can see that there's this real kind of, confusion in there, which is like not surprising, given if you look at the world. But in a sense, what we're trying to do with our meditation, one of the things, you're doing it with your meditation is you're trying to slow everything down, right? And you're kind of, and as you get more concentrated, particularly if you're on retreat, things seem to kind of slow down, and you start to see things more clearly, and your perception, like literally visuals become sharper, and hearing, taste, all your senses become more and more attuned. And it's like you're starting to see through the movement, and you're starting to see glimpses of the stillness. And you feel kind of a growing stillness within yourself, a calming. So this is like a approaching to that ultimate, letting go, that ultimate stillness. There is an aspect of us, though, even though we are drawn to it, that is afraid of that stillness, of that still point. And so at the point of almostness, that the last thing, perhaps this is not based on anything except my own intuition. So other Buddhists might say something different, but there seems to be this nugget, tiny molecule, atom of fear that it is the last thing that has to be let go of, to surrender into that stillness, because it's a stillness that sees the concept of who we are as empty. And because our entire world is seen through the lens of self, to let go of that is to abandon the thing that we, again, the delusion, very powerful delusion, that we have some independent existence. And there's some fear of disappearing, or sort of kind of the ultimate existential fear, the fear that we do not exist. However, with that realization, with that breakthrough, it's understood that, of course, we exist. We just do not exist in the way that we conceived or viewed our existence. There is a mind and body, there are thoughts and feelings, they all exist. They just are not a solid identity. So this is the Buddhist struggle. I'm not sure if I'm talking about, I guess I can pull back and give a little bit of the recovery, version of this, piece of this. If you hang out with me, as many of you do, you know that I can go into just pure Buddhist teaching sometimes, but there's always an addiction angle, interestingly, which and you probably see it yourself already as I'm talking about this. The identity that we hang on to as addicts is something that we are very afraid of losing, whether it's in terms of self-identification, of like who I think of myself as, oh, I'm somebody who does this, or whether it's more just, oh, I couldn't not drink, and so that's not so much about what we would think of as self-identity, but it nonetheless is very much about how we define ourselves. Who I am as somebody who has to drink, and I can't just stop. So there's that fear, and it's as with the fear of letting go, the ultimate letting go, it's a fear of losing something, and it's a fear of the unknown, and a fear of what's on the other side. And as with enlightenment, one discovers that there's freedom and true freedom, and much preferable to live in a world of recovery, of non-clinging to substances and behaviors, than to hold on to that idea of self. So you never know what you're going to get when you tune in here. And as usual, I don't really know what I'm going to give. So there you are. Did I see a Flippy? I see a hand up.
Hi there. I am really interested in the talk on emptiness, and because there's times that I feel that on a deep level, and letting go of the fear is what I've been doing. But I'm wondering, let's say I do get that intense feeling of emptiness in like a particular way. What do I do with that once I've reached that point where the self is not there anymore, and what I'm viewing and what I'm viewing is the same thing as who I am? And it's hard to explain, it's hard to put into words, but it's very much this, like, the veil has been dropped and lights look weird, and it's a little bit of dissociation. And you hit on letting go of the fear, which is what the Buddhists are telling me here. But is there any more that you could delve into as far as, say, you've reached that point of experiencing emptiness on a real level? As a Buddhist, what do I do with that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I don't want to suggest that there is some like strategy that you just apply, like here's the next step to do. But I will try to talk about it a little bit, because I think there's a lot of things to take into consideration. As you suggested, this can have a dissociative element to it. So when there's that, we want to maintain, we want to maintain mindfulness of the body, even as this sense of, emptiness or spaciousness opens up. So because there's a risk that we turn that experience into another thing that we're grasping at. So it's really important to sort of watch. This is where the game gets very subtle, shall we say, and where, you need to keep a kind of careful watch on where the clinging is happening. Because what we can infer from the fact that we're not enlightened at any given moment is that we are holding on to something in that moment. So we have to really watch that. So one of the things we can hold on to is, bliss, or the feeling of lightness and openness. And we can feel like, oh, I'm almost there, or, this is it. And that's just another thought, right? And so, and to understand that even if we have a breakthrough into that absolute letting go, this is a moment that happens, a moment in time that then passes. And well, that can transform your experience of self and really your experience of the world. Your life continues on with thoughts, feelings, and experiences and other humans. And so it doesn't sort of solve the problems of samsara in a way. It's like, okay, so there's that. But the other thing I would say to look for in that moment is that final, that I described, that final form of fear that's holding you, and to turn towards that and breathe into that. For myself, that's been the sense of, this is the last thing that doesn't want to go. That's hard. So perhaps to breathe with that and see if there is some letting go, more letting go that can happen. So I think it's a balance then in my mind, between someone coming in, I guess at the end. Sorry. In my mind, it's a balance between continuing to kind of move toward, shall we say, that more letting go, but at the same time, staying with the felt experience, not sort of getting ahead of yourself. You're like, oh, wow, whoa, what's happening? So as I said, I don't have like an answer to that, a mechanical answer, but I see it as just you're still in the same process of mindfulness, of mindfulness and letting go and trying to find where the clinging is. So you might, but ask that of other teachers.
Yeah, I have been. I appreciate your answer. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. Any other questions? Comments?
Hi, everyone. I put up the flyer for the retreat, and
good.
a reminder that this Friday, Kevin will be at Spirit Rock.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for the reminder. Yes, the second Friday comes very early this month. It comes since the first day of the month was a Friday. So yes, this Friday night, I will not be on my own Zoom account. I'll be on the Spirit Rock Zoom account. One of these days I'll be at Spirit Rock, I presume. I hope. So thank you all for showing up. Hope that this was helpful this morning. And I will see you soon. Blessings.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Sending love.
Thank you, Kevin.
Bye.
Bye.